We got the sashimi.
Oh my gosh, how sweet. For my kids?
Yeah, for the kids, and we go for like annual wheels or.
I love this, thank you.
It's more annual wheels, but more jerseys. It's like sashimi or pan food for what team you go for, but.
So we have two, we can root for one or the other.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
This is so good, thank you guys.
The moment Meghan Markle exchanged gifts with two Down syndrome YouTubers during the Australian tour is now everywhere online, and not for good reasons. Lady Colin Campbell has publicly broken down exactly what people are seeing in that footage, and her take is turning heads. The video, shared by independent commentary platform Meghan's Mole, shows the two YouTubers handing Meghan NFL jerseys, a container of chicken salt, and some sunscreen. Simple, thoughtful gifts, but Meghan's reaction told a completely different story. Watch the footage closely, and it's hard to miss. Her smile looks carefully placed. Her engagement feels like a rehearsed performance. Even her thank yous come across as automatic, like she's going through the motions rather than actually feeling the moment.
Because she's not a very good actress, she isn't able to conceal her lack of empathy. And also, she is so arrogant and disdainful, and so in her private life, often used to riding the hobby horse of superiority.
Campbell's read on this goes deeper than just the disability angle. Her take is that Meghan isn't specifically uncomfortable around people with disabilities. She's uncomfortable around anyone she can't use to her advantage, anyone she doesn't feel she has some kind of hold over. The disability angle people are running with online, according to Campbell, that's just the surface symptom, not the real issue underneath. Now, the actual gift exchange is worth breaking down in detail, because the contrast between the giver's genuine warmth and Meghan's polished performance is striking. The first YouTuber handed over an NFL football, explaining it as a gift for the kids, pointing out that since the household roots for the San Francisco 49ers, American football gear made perfect sense. Sweet gesture. Real energy behind it. Then came the chicken salt, a popular Australian product the YouTubers described as a savoury seasoning used on chips, baked chicken, and rice. Meghan's response? A smooth, does it have a more umami flavour? Followed by, I like that. Polished words, but the look on her face told a completely different story. Then came the sunscreen, presented with genuine care. The YouTubers noting that just like sunny California, Australia demands good sun protection. 3 gifts.
Got
Oh, what's this?
chicken salt.
Never heard of it.
You heard chicken salt before?
Chicken salt.
You can put in the chips, or you can make your like dinner, your recipe, like.
This is great. You can put in potato fries, baked chicken, rice dishes, or simply use as a salt substitute. Does it have a more umami flavor because of the chicken? A little savory?
Yeah,
I like that.
it's good. It's good for you, like kids. And this one,
What's this?
sunscreen,
Very important.
safety.
Thank you. Yes, and we live in a really sunny place just like you do.
Yeah.
This is very important.
3 moments of real, thoughtful effort. And that's exactly what makes this whole thing so telling. Every single gift was chosen with purpose. The NFL football, a nod to the family's known love for the San Francisco 49ers, practical, personal, and perfect for the kids. The chicken salt, selected because Meghan has publicly presented herself as a passionate home cook who loves experimenting in the kitchen, an authentic Australian product that should have landed perfectly. The sunscreen, a practical, health-conscious pick that fits the family's sunny California lifestyle down to the last detail. These 2 YouTubers did their homework. They showed up with genuine thought and real warmth behind every single choice. But the energy they brought into that room, it wasn't matched on the other side, not even close. That contrast is exactly what Dan Wootton and Lady Colin Campbell unpacked on their outspoken broadcast this week. And Campbell isn't just throwing opinions around, she brings serious weight to this conversation.
She is a very troubled woman. And now a particular video is going viral, Lady C, and I really wanted your take on this. So Meghan's mole posted, "You can tell how awkward and uncomfortable Meghan Markle is around people with disabilities." Now, this was the video filmed in Australia during that tour, and it's her with 2 Down syndrome YouTubers. But
she authored Daughter of Narcissus, a deeply personal memoir and sharp analytical work built from her own lived experience growing up with a mother whose narcissistic behavior shaped her entire early life. This isn't casual celebrity gossip, this is someone who had to study this pattern just to survive it. That real-life experience gave Campbell the framework to recognize these behavioral patterns, and she's been applying that lens with precision ever since. When she speaks on this, it hits differently. So when Campbell applies this framework to Meghan, it's not a personal attack, it's a trained eye recognizing a very familiar pattern. Here's the core of what Campbell lays out. Most narcissists are actually running from a deep sense of inadequacy underneath it all. The arrogance, the superiority, the "I'm more special than everyone else's" energy that's not the real personality. That's the armor. It's a protective wall built to keep the vulnerability hidden, and it needs constant reinforcement to hold up. That's where the real problem shows up. Every single interaction becomes a test. Does this person confirm how special I am? If they can't deliver that confirmation, they become a threat. Not physically, but emotionally, because they risk cracking that carefully constructed wall.
Because many narcissistic women victimize their husbands and turn them into what Donald Trump called pussy whipped. And let's face facts, Harry is pussy whipped. You only need to look at him on his own and then look at him with Meghan, and he's he's a study in being a pathetic.
So the narcissist quietly narrows their world down to people who feed the image. Anyone who can't do that gets the cold shoulder, or worse, the polished, performative version of warmth that looks right on camera but feels completely hollow up close. Now, apply that to the gift exchange and everything snaps into focus. Those YouTubers couldn't advance Meghan's brand. They couldn't boost her commercial standing or add to her institutional image. They had zero leverage to offer, and according to Campbell's framework, that's exactly why the discomfort was written all over her face. Campbell then draws a comparison that really cuts deep. Princess Diana. Diana connected so naturally with vulnerable and disadvantaged people because, according to Campbell, she genuinely saw herself as one of them. That wasn't performance, that was real. Diana's vulnerability was real, rooted in the pain of her parents' bitter separation, the divorce, the custody battles that followed her through childhood and never fully left her. That wound stayed with her, and it became the very thing that made her connection with struggling and disadvantaged people so authentic. She didn't perform empathy, she recognized it, because she had lived a version of it herself. That's the key difference Campbell draws. Meghan, on Campbell's reading, doesn't carry that same underlying vulnerability, so when the cameras roll in a room full of people she can't leverage,
I think she's a rotten actress. And I don't only think her contempt and disdain is reserved for people with disabilities. She has no empathy.
There's nothing real underneath the smile to draw from. The result is exactly what that viral video captured: performative warmth with hollow eyes behind it. And here's where it gets really interesting. Campbell draws on her own mother as the textbook example of how this pattern can be perfectly hidden when the acting is good enough. Campbell's mother, by her account, was a deeply narcissistic figure who could flip on the charm like a switch in social settings. People who met her called her glorious, magnetic, admirable, but behind closed doors, when the performance was no longer needed, the mask came completely off. The difference with Meghan? Campbell says plainly she's a poor actress. She cannot hold the performance together when the stakes feel low to her. The mask slips, especially around people she perceives as beneath her social level. That Down syndrome YouTuber video isn't just a bad moment, it's the mask slipping in real time, caught on camera for the world to see. The bitter irony is that Meghan's entire professional background was acting, and yet it's not enough to carry the social role she's now cast herself in.
One of the features of narcissism, Dan, is that you regard yourself as more special and better than anyone else, which is your overcompensation for an early awareness that you are actually inadequate on some level.
Hollywood gave her scripts, multiple takes, editing suites to smooth over the cracks. Real life doesn't come with a director yelling cut. The royal world offers none of Hollywood's safety nets. No retakes, no editing, no script to fall back on. Every engagement is live, unfiltered, and whatever is bubbling underneath the surface gets captured exactly as it is. And the cameras don't lie. That viral video is just the latest addition to a long and growing archive of moments where the performance cracks under pressure. But Campbell doesn't stop at Meghan. She turns her analytical lens directly onto Harry, and what she finds is just as striking. According to Campbell, Harry has genuinely convinced himself that Meghan is the living embodiment of his mother, and that conviction, it's doing serious damage. Because when you place Meghan's documented behavior next to Diana's real and deeply human empathy, the comparison simply does not hold up. Diana was complicated. She had her own struggles, her own flaws, but her emotional vulnerability was real, and it fueled genuine connection with people who were hurting.
But my mother was well brought up and well bred, and she had impeccable manners socially. And so, I mean, the disdain and contempt she had for people was beyond belief. But when you met her socially, because she was properly brought up and knew how to behave and was a good enough actress to fake it.
That authenticity was never in question. Meghan, on Campbell's reading, doesn't carry that emotional core, which means Harry's devotion is built not on reality, but on a carefully marketed image that Meghan has constructed and Harry has completely bought into. And the cost of that misidentification is written all over him. Harry himself has publicly documented his own psychological struggles, and Campbell's view is that the relationship dynamic is a major driving force behind it. Then there's the framing that really set the internet on fire. Commentary from Donald Trump described Harry as a man completely subdued by his wife, someone whose independence had all but disappeared. Campbell didn't push back on that framing one bit. Her own words were blunt. He's a study in being pathetic. Watch Harry alone versus Harry beside Meghan, and the difference is impossible to miss. The man operating in that marriage is a diminished version of who he actually is. The toll this marriage has taken on Harry is visible not just in what he says, but in every photo, every video appearance, every public moment where the contrast between who he was and who he is now is impossible to ignore. But Campbell doesn't stop there. She moves into territory that cuts even deeper the race card framing, and this part of her argument carries serious weight, especially given where she comes from. Campbell was born in Jamaica, and she brings that cultural context directly into her analysis. Jamaica's national motto is, "Out of many."
Meghan is an appalling actress. Meghan cannot contain what is going on beneath the surface. So the mask is constantly slipping, and it will inevitably slip with those who are beneath her in her perception.
One people, a phrase that reflects a long national history of multiple ethnic backgrounds coming together as a single unified identity. That's not just a slogan, it's a foundational value. So when the Sussex household deploys racial identity as a tool of grievance and institutional complaint, Campbell sees it as a direct strike against that unifying framework. And she goes further in Jamaican cultural terms. Meghan would not be identified as a black woman. She would be recognized as a brown woman, a person of mixed heritage, a category that Jamaican cultural discourse has always identified with specificity and nuance. Framing her as simply black, and then using that framing as the basis for institutional grievance against the British royal establishment, Campbell calls that operationally indefensible. And here's where it gets even more explosive. Campbell reveals that multiple diplomats and prominent figures from West Indian and African nations have privately approached her at receptions and professional events, not to criticize her, but to thank her for speaking out. Their concern? That the Sussex household's racial framing has created real diplomatic headaches in their home countries, complicating relationships those governments have carefully built with the United Kingdom. The people the Sussex household claims to speak for their actual representatives have quietly but clearly pushed back.
But Diana, whatever her failings, had genuine empathy for the disadvantaged. Because
she did.
Diana
She really
genuinely felt that she was disadvantaged, and she was, as a result of the childhood trauma she endured during her parents' separation and divorce and custody battle.
The household positioned itself as the voice of communities of color, and those very communities, through their diplomats and leaders, have rejected that claim outright. Now, Campbell introduces another layer to this argument, one that exposes a serious inconsistency at the heart of the Sussex household's entire racial narrative. She brings up the one-drop rule, the old American legal and cultural framework that classified anyone with any African ancestry, no matter how distant, as black. Campbell's position is clear: that rule was a tool of historical injustice, and it has no place as a legitimate framework in today's conversations about identity. But here's the explosive part, she argues. The Sussex household has been quietly using exactly that rule to build Meghan's identity as a black woman, while conveniently refusing to apply the same logic when it would complicate their narrative. That selective application, Campbell says, is the tell. It signals that the racial framing isn't about genuine identity, it's a strategic instrument. And then Campbell drops something that reframes the entire first woman of color in the royal family claim.
It could be a real toughie, but she had an emotional vulnerability that Meghan lacks, and that's why Diana was so good with the disadvantaged, and Meghan is so appalling. That's my take on it. I don't know what you think.
No, I think you're completely right. I really do. And I think I've got to stop these stunts because they're never going to work.
Campbell was actually the first person to document Diana's Indian heritage back in her 1992 biography. It was controversial at the time, but 25 years later, the Times of India ran it on their front pages with enormous pride. And DNA evidence through Prince William confirmed the Indian ancestry through the maternal line. So, under the very same one-drop rule the Sussex household uses to frame Meghan's identity, Diana herself was a woman of colour. The claim that Meghan was some kind of historic first doesn't hold up against the documented record, and it only works if the audience simply doesn't know about Diana's heritage. But Campbell goes even further back. Queen Charlotte, a historical British queen, carried ancestry traced to Madragana of Faro, a woman of either North African or Sub-Saharan African origin, 6 generations back. The popular TV series Bridgerton ran with that detail creatively, but the historical foundation is real and documented. African ancestry has existed within the British royal bloodline for centuries. The Sussex historic first narrative? It crumbles the moment you look at the actual family history. And now, the development that ties the entire picture together. Thomas Markle has returned to American soil, and the implications are massive. After an extended period based in the Philippines, which included a serious surgery to amputate part of his lower leg, and the grueling recovery process of being fitted for a prosthetic, Meghan's father is back in the cross, United States. He fought through one of the most physically and emotionally challenging periods of his life, largely without his famous daughter anywhere near him.
She's pretending that she is positioned for great success, when we all know that everything she does commercially is a flop. And it has to be a flop because people don't like her. People don't buy products from celebrities who are unlikable.
And now that he's back on American soil, the entire dynamic shifts. Because the Sussex household has leaned heavily on geographical distance as the convenient excuse for Meghan's complete absence from her father's life. He was far away, hard to reach, complicated by international travel and medical situations in another country. That narrative held just enough water to keep the questions at bay, but that excuse has now completely evaporated. Thomas Markle is in the same country, accessing the same kind of medical care and facilities that the Sussex household itself operates within. The distance argument is dead. What remains is nothing but the choice, and that choice belongs entirely to Meghan. This is where Campbell's analysis cuts deepest, because the question that naturally follows is, why? Why maintain this level of estrangement when the logistical barriers no longer exist? Why keep a father who has been through so much at arm's length when reaching out is now entirely within reach? Campbell's answer is as sharp as it is revealing. According to Campbell, Meghan has built a version of herself for Harry, a carefully constructed story about her past, her background, her experiences, her identity, and significant parts of that story don't survive contact with the people who actually knew her before Harry came along. Thomas Markle is one of those people. He was there. He knows the real timeline. He knows what was said, what was promised, what was true and what was embellished. And in any real, sustained, unfiltered conversation between Harry and his father-in-law, those discrepancies would surface. The corrections would come naturally, not even necessarily as attacks, just as a father talking honestly about his daughter's life. But those honest corrections would land like a wrecking ball on the framings that hold the Sussex marriage together. So the estrangement, on Campbell's reading, isn't really about hurt feelings or family drama or the complexities of a blended family navigating fame. It is a structural protection mechanism. Keep Thomas Markle at a distance. Keep Harry away from anyone who can contradict the narrative, and the whole carefully constructed picture stays intact. The moment that wall comes down, the picture starts falling apart. That's the real reason the door stays closed. And while Meghan has kept that door firmly shut, someone else in the Markle family has been showing up consistently: Samantha Markle, Meghan's half-sister. Samantha has been one of the most persistent voices on this entire situation, and people can debate her methods and her motivations all they want, but one thing is undeniable. She has been there, through the medical crises, through the surgeries, through the recovery, through the public silence from Meghan's side. Samantha has remained engaged with her father's welfare in ways that are visible, documented, and real. Samantha has been vocal about the frustration of watching her father face these serious health challenges without Meghan anywhere in sight. She has spoken openly about what it means to be the one holding things together while the most famous member of the family treats the situation as if it simply doesn't exist. And, according to the public record, Thomas Markle's return to the United States is partly the result of Samantha's sustained advocacy for her father's welfare and best interests. She pushed for it. She supported it. She made it happen. Now place that next to Meghan's documented absence, and the contrast is striking. This is not a story about an entire difficult family that nobody could reasonably engage with. Other family members are engaging actively, consistently, and with genuine investment. The estrangement is not a Markle family pattern. It is a Meghan-specific decision, maintained deliberately, for reasons that Campbell's framework makes very clear. Campbell's message to Harry on this point is about as direct as it gets, and it's the kind of advice that cuts right through the noise. Stop asking for permission. Stop waiting for the situation to be managed and approved and strategically timed. Just get on a plane and go visit Thomas Markle. The argument Campbell makes is that Meghan's ability to weaponize the marriage against that visit is far weaker than it might appear. The threat that has historically kept Harry in line, the implied consequence of stepping out of the approved boundaries, depends on Meghan having somewhere else to go and someone else to go to. a billionaire waiting in the wings, a successor relationship already lined up. Without that fallback position clearly in place, the leverage shrinks dramatically. The threat loses its teeth, and Campbell goes further, arguing that Harry executing that visit, just showing up and having that real conversation with his father-in-law, would actually be liberating for everyone involved. Harry would finally have access to the version of events that exists outside the carefully managed bubble he has been living inside. The false framings that have shaped his understanding of his own marriage, his own family decisions, and his own identity would start to unravel, and that unraveling, as painful as it might be in the short term, would hand Harry back something he has visibly been losing for years: his own sense of self, his independent judgment, his agency. And here's the part that might surprise people: Campbell suggests it would actually relieve Meghan too. The performance of being the perfect, devoted, misunderstood wife that Meghan maintains in Harry's presence is exhausting by any measure. The constant management of the narrative, the careful monitoring of who Harry speaks to and what gets back to him, the simpering social register she holds around him, all of that requires sustained effort. If the truth is already out, if Harry already knows the full picture, the performance becomes unnecessary. In a strange way, the collapse of the illusion could release both of them from the dynamic that is clearly grinding them both down. Now zoom out and look at everything Campbell has laid out across this entire analysis, because when you see it all together, the full picture is impossible to dismiss. Start with the viral gift exchange video, 2 YouTubers showing up with genuine warmth, thoughtful gifts, and real human energy, met with a performance so hollow that audiences around the world clocked it immediately. That video didn't just go viral because people enjoy drama, it went viral because it confirmed something millions of people had already been sensing but couldn't quite articulate. Campbell gave them the language and the framework to articulate it. Layer onto that the narcissism analysis, the deep dive into why certain people can only engage authentically with those who serve their interests, and why everyone else gets the calibrated performance instead of the real thing. This isn't name-calling. This is a structured, analytical framework built by someone who spent decades studying the pattern from the inside through her own lived experience, and then developed it into a professional body of work. Add the Diana contrast, the single most powerful illustration of what genuine empathy looks like versus what its imitation looks like. Diana's vulnerability was real, and it produced real connection. The comparison is not flattering, and it is not designed to be. It is designed to be accurate. Then, factor in Harry's visibly diminished presence, the documented behavioral shift between Harry alone and Harry beside Meghan. The man who once carried himself with a particular kind of lived-in confidence now operates in a register that multiple commentators, analysts, and even casual observers have described as a shadow of his former self. Campbell's framing is blunt. This is what being completely subdued by a partner looks like when it plays out in public over years. Stack on the race card contradictions, the deployment of identity as a grievance tool, the selective application of racial frameworks, the dismissal of Diana's documented Indian heritage and Queen Charlotte's documented African ancestry, and the quiet but firm rejection of the Sussex household's self-appointed role as spokesperson for communities of colour by the actual diplomatic representatives of those communities. The foundation of that narrative has been systematically dismantled by the historical record. And now add Thomas Markle's return, the removal of the last remaining logistical excuse, the exposure of the estrangement as a deliberate protective strategy rather than a circumstantial reality, and the clear pathway that Campbell has outlined for Harry to begin recovering what he has lost. Every single one of these elements connects. They are not isolated controversies. They are not random bad moments or media pile-ons. They are facets of the same underlying configuration, and Campbell's analytical framework is the lens that brings all of it into focus simultaneously. The audience has been reading this pattern accurately for a long time, but what's shifting now is the institutional response. The cultural permission that once required kid-glove treatment of the Sussex household is contracting. The financial mathematics are working through the available runway, with analyst estimates placing that runway at approximately 5 years at the current rate of expenditure against a commercial pipeline that continues to shrink. The pressure is not going away. It is building, and it will keep building. What Campbell has built across decades of professional and personal engagement is not a hit job. It is a framework rigorous, consistent, and grounded in real analytical work that allows audiences to read what they are actually seeing rather than what they are being told to see. And right now, what they are seeing is a household whose framings are collapsing against the documentary record on every front simultaneously. The coming months will be telling. Thomas Markle is on American soil. Harry has expressed interest in connection. The commercial pipeline continues to contract. The cultural permission continues to narrow. And every viral moment, every diplomatic pushback, every historical correction adds another data point to the cumulative picture that the audience is now reading with remarkable clarity and precision. This is not the end of the story, it is the moment where the story shifts into a new and far more consequential phase. And Campbell's framework will be right there, providing the analytical tools to read every development as it unfolds. If this breakdown had you completely locked in from start to finish, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps more than you think. Share this with someone who needs to see the full picture laid out like this, because this kind of analysis deserves a wider audience. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Harry will ever make that visit? Do you think the narrative is finally starting to crack? We read every single comment, and we want to know exactly where you stand on all of this. And if you are not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that button right now, because there is a lot more coming, and you do not want to miss what is next. See you in the next one.